Homeboy. Boy. Brothers, there's only one blood, cause it ain't no sense in us trampling on the stones. It's us, down to the bone. Blood is thick, waters were known well, cousins were kept apart, mothers were often memories. Fathers were not favorites on the farm, for he could do some harm, he could wreck the master's scheme, for he, brothers, could dream. Your mama ain't no saint, your daddy died in a shallow stream, but your uncle, Dr. King, did have a dream, my brother. And what is your real excuse? Why can't you study your lessons and stay in school? Why can't you study your lessons and stay in school? Free love and sex ain't nothing but a game.
Welcome to the Qumran Report. May the peace and blessings of a life-giving creative spirit be upon you and upon your family. My name is Melvin Ishmael Johnson, coming at you live from Bobby Buck Studios. Our calling number is 669-900-6833. The ID number is 895-663-54266, and hit pound if you would like to call in. Now, this week on the Qumran Report, our topic is celebrating the birthday of Paul Robeson, which is April the 9th, 1898, and Lynn Manning, Los Angeles playwright Lynn Manning, born April the 30th, which is today, 1955. And we're also going to talk about reparations, we're going to talk a little Black history, and some of the solutions that's impacting our community. Our guest is Flat Black, Clarence Allen, Eddie Justice Jones, OG Man, playwright George Corbin, and Howard Rayford. My name is Melvin Ishmael Johnson, your host. Now, first of all, I want to say to the community, stay safe, keep the family and your loved ones safe. Don't take any unnecessary chances. Be patient, and this will pass. All of us will have to adapt to a new way of doing things. Now, here are a few things that you can do to help build up your immune system. Make sure that these 5 things is a regular part of your diet and your family. Garlic, honey, oatmeal, herbal tea, and water. Now, I want to read just a little quick thing from the cookbook Nubian Delight about the importance of garlic. It said garlic contains many sulfur compounds. These sulfur compounds kill bacteria, fungi, and viruses. So garlic is very important. Honey have a healing ingredient. And I want to read one more thing about oatmeal, and that's from the Health-Filled Food book, Back to Eden by Jethro Klaus. Klaus said that oatmeal, if combined with other food as to prevent congestions and the formation of toxins and acid due to the acid reaction, would do more to prevent contagious disease than all of the serums thus far invented or that will ever be. Oatmeal is neither artificial nor a substitute. It is a natural agent for the supply of those elements which by their antiseptic properties make contagious infection impossible. And that's from the book Back to Eden by Jethro Klaus. So take care of yourself. This is something that make sure for the community members, this is a regular part that you got up in your closet. You got that honey, you can use that instead of sugar. That oatmeal, you know how we come up on that oatmeal. I'm not talking about that little instant pack oatmeal. I'm talking about that steel grade oatmeal. And then definitely garlic. You know, if you feel yourself having little symptoms of a cold or something, take some garlic and put it in your chicken soup. Make that a regular, pass it on to the young ones. Stay healthy and build up that immune system out there. Now, I would like to remember, as we go around, let's try to keep from talking over each other. Let's have a good, respectful discussion about what we're getting ready to talk about. Now, first of all, I want you to take about 2 minutes and tell our listening audience a little about yourself, kind of work you're involved in, your contact information, and we're going to do it again at the end of the show. Let's start with Flat Black.
All right. Hey, Melvin.
Hey, Flat.
My name is Flat Black, and first of all, I'd like to acknowledge Bobby Buck, and thank him for the opportunity to be on this show. And I've known him for a while. I've known Bobby for a while, and he's always taking care of business, getting things done. And likewise, Melvin Ishmael Johnson, a good friend, highly respected. I've had the opportunity to work with both men and know whatever they put their hands to, they always do a good job. Now, about me right now, as a man of God, and I say that because that's what I believe. I believe we have to stand up for the word of God and say, you know, represent what it has to say. My goals or I guess purposes right now that I'm working on is to keep homosexual ideology out of our elementary and middle schools. Okay, they have bills in California that people are trying to pass to get that going in starting as far as early as kindergarten through 5th grade. And I don't think that's teaching, I think that's brainwashing. Okay, and the second thing that I'm working on right now is to expose the truth about Nancy Pelosi's Equality Act. The fact that transgender girls who are boys who think they're girls are embarrassing our young ladies in sports and taking away opportunities. This act takes away the rights for everyone who does not agree with the homosexual or transgender lifestyle.
Okay, we get a chance to talk about, expound a little bit more on that. Okay, OG.
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little about yourself, your program, your contact. Take a couple minutes, and we'll detail more when we start talking about Skid Row and other things.
Okay, well, my name is Manuel Campito. Everybody call me OG Man. And I'm a writer, I'm an author. I have my own business, just putting it down, associate publishing company. And I also am the founder of a Skid Row Clothing and Designs and Peace in the Hood. That's a coloring book that I wrote for the urban area. You can find that on YouTube. And I'm a community organizer. And at the present moment, I'm working on a contract with the city to monitor the portal and the hand washing stations that are down in Skid Row. So the city was authorized by the judge to put out some porta potties and hand washing stations, and our job is to monitor and make sure that they are in good condition, that they got soap, water, and toilet paper in and things of that nature. So that's one of our most recent projects right now.
Okay, we get a chance to talk about that in details when we get to that section. I also want to talk about how some of your ideas about how to economically empower some of the residents of Skid Row, like setting up business, et cetera, like that, but we get to that. our brother that's on the phone.
Hey, how you doing?
Don.
All right. Yeah, Don. My name is Don Henderson. I am a IBO, which is independent business owner with the business UIN, Urban Information Network, and we are an online internet streaming platform that supports independent filmmakers, TV show producers, and documentary producers, as well as we do our own productions. And, we're headquartered in Detroit, and I myself, I work for a public school system in Detroit. I'm a former director of a mentoring group and girls volleyball coach and community activist.
In Detroit.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's get started. Do we have anybody else on yet? Okay, let's get started. I just want to read a little on Lynn Manning, and then I'm going to really get into Paul Roach, start talking about reparation. Lynn Manning, right here from Los Angeles, born April the 3rd, 1955. The brother passed August the 3rd, 2015. He was an American playwright, poet, and actor known for his autobiographical work that explores the complexities of his life as a blind African-American man. Wrote a play that we did called Voice from the Village for the Fringe Festival last year. The brother's an outstanding writer. He wrote 19 plays. All of his plays is about Los Angeles. He is one of the co-founders of the Watts Village Theater Company. And the tragedy now is that most of the brother's plays is tied up by the Internal Revenue Service after he passed. And I hope that's worked out so the people here in Los Angeles get a chance to see the plays that this brother wrote all about Los Angeles. This is a brother that was blinded up in Hollywood. A stranger shot him in the face when he was 23, and he lost his sight. And from there, he developed into a poet, great playwright, etc., like that. So that's Lynn Manning, and today is his birthday. Now, I want to spend some time talking about Paul Robeson, William Pattinson, and reparations. Let me just read who Paul Robeson is, a little paragraph, and then on William Pattinson, and we'll start talking about that for a little. Paul Leroy Robeson, born April the 9th, 1898. He passed January the 23rd, 1976. He was an American bass baritone concert artist and stage and film actor who became famous both for his cultural accomplishment and for his political activism. Now, William Lorenzo Pattinson, this is a person that should be he should be on the tongue of every African American, descendants of slave American, should know who this individual is. And he kind of got lost in history. He was born August the 27th, 1891. He passed March the 5th, 1980. He was an African American leader in the Communist Party USA and head of the International Labor Defense, a group that offered legal representation to communists, trade unions, and African American cases involving issues of political or racial persecution. Pattinson was also the lawyer for Huey P. Newton. He was also the lawyer for Angela Davis. He was known as Mr. Civil Rights. And but to me, the most important thing about William Pattinson and Paul Robeson, a very close friend that go all the way back to the early 20s, is that December the 17th, 1951, Paul Robeson and William Pattinson took the United States before the UN and accused them for genocide against the descendants of the chattel slaves of America. And for that, Paul Robeson's passport was taken. It was 8 years before they let him out of the United States again to quiet his voice down. And William Pattinson, he was put in federal prison because what happened, he took the petition to Paris, France, where the UN was meeting, and delivered the petition there. At the same time, Paul Robeson did it in New York here, and they paid a steep price for this. Now, the reason I want to tie this into reparations is because William Pattinson was an outstanding attorney. As I mentioned earlier, he was an attorney for Huey P. Newton, attorney for Angela Davis, the Scottsboro case, the Trenton Six. You just go down the line. He was involved with that for helping African Americans during the 40s and the 50s and et cetera like that. Now, one of the name of the 237-page document that they presented before the UN, it was a list of 152, it was more than that, but they list 152 incidents against the descendants of the chattel slaves of America in down south lynching, bombings, et cetera, like that. And now where I think this is so important for reparation is because it's like a legal brief that laid the foundations for what the country owed the descendants of the slaves, chattel slaves of America, for basically building this country and still owe reparation. One other incident, I'm gonna mention that, and then we're gonna open it up for a discussion on this reparation thing, is a lot of people don't know that you had the 1927 flood in the Mississippi, Louisiana Delta, all down there, that covered the entire Delta for 4 months. And during this particular time, the descendants of the slaves of America was forced to work under gunpoint. So that's grounds for reparations there. And another incident that happened during that particular time, up until that particular time, the descendants of the chattel slaves of America was part of the Republican Party. The Democratic Party, which was the party of the Confederacy and the party of the KKK, at that particular time, African American descendants of slaves of America wasn't involved in that party. Here's how we got involved with these Democrats. And I say it all the time, that we got to figure out a way to get away from these Democrats and Republicans. We can still be involved with the political process, but we should be independent. You know, we could almost, from a historical point of view, understand people that want to be a Republican, et cetera, like that, because the Republican Party came into existence to fight for the freedom of the descendants of slaves of America. But the Democrats, these Dixiecrats, that fought to keep slavery going during the Civil War, and even after that, during destroyed Reconstruction, and the Dixiecrats, and even the same people that fought against Dr. King and all that kind of stuff like that. Somebody explain to me why we still messing around with this Democratic Party. You know, I often say, if you were black and you were Democrat, then hey, you part of the black KKK, etc. But what happened is during the time of the 27th flood, you had Herbert Hoover, who was the Secretary of Commerce. He met with Robert Moulton, who succeeded Booker T. Washington at Tuskegee Institute. And he promised that after the 27 flood, that he was going to divide some of the bankrupt land that you had among the descendants of the slaves of America, among the African Americans in the South. See, and what happened when he became president, he went back on his word. He made an alliance with the Democratic Dixiecrats at that particular time. And what happened, Robert Moulton, who was the head of the Republican Party, he moved from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party, and the Black leadership went in the direction of becoming Democrats. And they supported Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who became the president. And we know he was up there for 16 years. He brought in the whole social program, and we've been involved with this Democrats ever since. Because I feel that if we're gonna get reparations, we're gonna get the reparation as independents. We're not gonna get it from the Republican Party, and we're not gonna get it from the Democratic Party. One more thing, and I want to open it up. I know we got the whole concept that people call the ADOC, or what they talk about, descendants of slaves of America, chattel slaves of America, who should pursue their reparation just from the orbit of the United States. But I believe that's a myth, and that's a problem. Because when you look at people like Marcus Garvey, Paul Robeson, Malcolm X, and Dr. King in their latter days, they understood the importance of the international connection. They understood that slavery was an international concept. It wasn't just something that was happening here in the United States. And if we're going to get reparation, we have to be the vanguard, no doubt, that the descendants of chattel slaves of America should be at the forefront. But you're going to have to take it on the international and get support on an international basis. Let me open up. Anybody want to pick up on that?
Yeah. I don't think we're going to get to no Skid Row today, but listen, I agree with everything. I agree with everything. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I like this, the historical analysis. You know, a lot of people don't understand about the Democratic Party being founded by the KKK. They don't understand that part too. You know what I mean? Yeah, most blacks were Republicans, you know what I mean? And during that Reconstruction part of time, there was a lot of black, you know, elected officials. But one thing is really, we can bring it up to today too, because the Civil War and all of that was between white people. We got caught up in the slavery, you know, really wasn't no big concern. The only thing about slavery was the fact that people in the North didn't want no free labor coming out there. Okay. But as far as slavery, as long as it stayed down south, white people up north didn't really care about it. You understand me? The only reason why it was a big problem, because the South tried to take land. When they tried to take land, that's when the war started, about this land, okay? And then when they promised black people 40 acres and a mule, okay, and after the war was over with and they assessed the situation, if they would have gave every black man and woman 40 acres and a mule, the South would have been controlled by black people. That's why they didn't give up the land. Once they figured it out, they was not gonna give black people no land. That was out. That's when they came up with all that shit, all that you know, what was that? The Freeman Bureau and all that other kind of stuff, giving black people land. Okay, yeah, a lot of black people did. They didn't get the 40 acres and a mule, but they did get some land. But when the KKK, and the reason why the KKK was able to come back alive, because the North controlled the South, and the black people were voting. White people could not vote. All their rights were taken away, okay? It's when the North had to go out west and open up the the West and fight them Indians, they had to take the soldiers out of the South and send them out West to fight the Indians. Even the 54th Regiment, the Black Regiment, we all glory, you know what I'm saying? They became the Buffalo Soldiers. And that way, because black people could have defended themselves against the KKK. It was enough of them. Just like they had all them slavery votes. Black people could have took over the South and they could have killed up every white folk out there if they wanted to. But they didn't do that. They didn't do that. They let the KKK come back, burn them out, and everything else, lynch them, do everything they wanted to do to them. Even up to this day, even at the time of civil rights, white folks were just doing what they wanted to do to black people. Black people didn't want to defend themselves. Most black people that was violent came out West. After they got through killing some white people, they ran out here. Mississippi, Alabama, Freeport, they killed somebody, they had to leave. So with this reparation, white folks know they owe it to us. But what they've been able to do is keep it out the history book, because most young white people don't know nothing about no reparation. They don't know nothing about no reparation. And black people, young black people, 20 years old, 16 years old, they don't know nothing about no reparation either. Why? Because older black people ain't taught them nothing. NAACP, Urban League, all of them. They don't teach no reparation in the community.
Can I say something?
Flat.
Yeah. I did a little research on it, and there was an article, a guy named Henry Louis Gates.
Henry Louis Gates.
Henry Louis Gates Jr. And the vice president who took over after Lincoln reneged on and I won't call it 40 acres and a mule, but blacks were given land as part of his reparation. And this vice president was a Democrat. And I mean, I don't know how that works, but his name was Andrew Johnson. And when he assumed the role, he overturned, and it says in the article 40 acres and a mule, that he overturned that what Lincoln had set up. Now, this is an article, and I gave you the name of the guy that wrote the article, and it's an article about the truth behind 40 acres and a mule by Henry Louis Gates. Now, personally myself, I think, I think the Democratic Party is still killing and keeping black people at a disadvantage. And I just truly believe that. I think there's a lot of evidence with their support of abortion and homosexuality. But I think that the whole thing with reparation is also what Democrats are doing. They're filling our communities up with weed, and now they're talking about decriminalizing all drugs. There's that talk or that ideology now circulating in the House of Congress. And if you watch the Democratic debates, it was even brought up in the debates about decriminalizing all drugs, heroin, opioids, all of them. And they've already made weed legal. And you know where that those drugs are landing in our communities. So when you talk about reparation, I call it dope and false hope is what they're doing to keep us at a standstill. Now, a lot of us are moving and working, but a lot of us are hoping for this money or whatever it is that is being promised. And I think in doing that, with that false hope and the drugs, they're keeping black people, and not only black people, but a lot of people at a dead standstill. And that's just my opinion about that.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can chime in.
Yes.
He's on point with a lot of that. And because, well, I'll start off this way. First of all, we can walk and chew gum. We can still seek reparations. We can still vote, in elections, it's free. It don't cost you nothing. But we also have to be entrepreneurs. And I say that because the best way to prevent you being unemployed is to get busy doing something that, you have an innate ability to do. And if you don't know about business, you can find ways to go into business. And, and that's tied in with our legacy, not just in America, but around the world. Because with you bringing up Paul Robeson and you reading off the list of talents that he had even more than that. But if you notice, he's not talked about much in history. You don't even hear about his name in Black history. You got to do a deep dive to get to that information. And the other gentleman you mentioned, same thing. But that's our fault, because I'm a believer in being in the game, not a spectator. Black people, and a lot of this is our own fault, are spectators. See, we want to have somebody else do something that, if we can't do it totally for ourselves, we have to at least do it partially. And, so people keep getting the same thing because we keep doing the same thing. History repeats itself. People know about the bombings and the plight of Tulsa, Oklahoma, but they don't know about the same things that they did in every Black community in America from Reconstruction forward to Black people. But if you notice, we're just now, and I'm older, I'm almost 60, just finding out a lot of this stuff late in my life, because the stories weren't told because we didn't have a media platform. And so with the company that I work with, UIN, Urban Information Network, not only are we working to put our stories out, we're tying the history, our intellectual properties, what we create, as well as our intelligence, our genius to build something to support anybody who wants to work with us. But starting with Black folks first. Because as you know, on the airplane, they tell you if the plane is going down or in trouble and the mask drop down, they say put the mask on yourself first. And that is a scary philosophy for, America, because they're used to us being ignorant. And lastly, we have to understand that we are public enemy number one. And you can look at how right now the coronavirus is affecting, a lot of African Americans in cities where the population is close to or the majority population. Interesting, right? We got to look at how, when you look back at history, even how gynecology was created, how they experimented on Black women. You won't see that in the history books. And you barely hear about the syphilis experiments they did in Tuskegee.
Yeah.
So, and lastly, on top of all that is that they're not afraid of us getting violent. They're afraid of us getting educated about us.
Right.
I think
educated about
No, you already had your turn, baby. I like to add on that.
Go ahead.
First of all, this is what I'm saying before. what the white people today don't know nothing about all that. We hardly know about it, but they don't know nothing about it. That's why they're not sensitive, you know what I'm saying, to our issues. Some are, you know, you see the far white radicals, but even with them, even with Paul Robeson, back in them days, the Communist Party had their own agenda. You understand what I'm saying? He became Angela Davis. They became a part of that international movement, but that movement also had its own platform. That's why he got so much slack when he said what he said, and they labeled him a communist and everything else. Just like Martin Luther King, anytime you try to do something positive, you know, if you quote any Mao Zedong or anything, you're a communist now. And that's a serious problem because, see, the president of the United States can go meet with Russia. They don't call him no communist. He go meet with all the communists in the world, and he ain't no communist. We become communists because our mind is so weak. We easily influence. Okay? But the other thing, let me just finish. The other thing about business, we need businesses. Because if everybody, like the economy that fell apart right now, if we don't have our own businesses, we're going to go down with it. And see, like he said, history, Black Wall Street. We supposed to know about Black Wall Street. We supposed to know that black people built businesses and had their own banks and stuff like that. You know what I mean? We ain't trying to build. We too busy trying to get grants and stuff. You know, we don't want to put that work in that requires a business. You know what I'm saying? And the other thing is, like he said, he's older, he's learning stuff. That's a fault with the continuity of history. Why is it that every generation has to start over to find out what the heck been going on?
Okay. Flat, you want to say something?
No, I appreciate what has been said, and it's like the brother said, is I don't think everybody can run a business, but I think if you're not running something, you need it to at least work and learn and be about yourself and or a family to work and be responsible in society. I think there's an American game being played, and I think black people don't want to learn the game. They want to make up their own rules. I think if you're in the game, then you got to learn the game. You got to learn the system, and you got to operate and not be so resistant about the things that, in my opinion, like when you say a neutral, whether it's Democrat or Republican, the only way we're going to get reparation is that we're going to get it ourselves. Now, to me, you saying that is so far-fetched. It's like half of us, we can't even agree on enough to get anything accomplished on Skid Row. How are we going to come together with something that massive? So, I mean, it works. It's good. You know, it's a good discussion.
Well, let me get back to Don back in Detroit. We still got Don in Detroit, right?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, now let's look at, are you familiar when you say you're around 60 or something like that? So you were around when Coleman Young was a mayor?
Yes.
Okay, now Coleman Young, I remember clearly, because during my time there, the conflict, you know, Detroit have always been a huge majority black city. I mean, when I was there, it was like 75% African American in Detroit. Coleman Young was the mayor. Now, Coleman Young had an edge to him simply because Coleman Young was a Tuskegee Airman. He was a captain in the Tuskegee Airmen, and he always distrusted white people simply because how they treated the officers during that particular time, the black officers, Tuskegee Airmen, as opposed to the German prisoners, the German and Italian prisoners of war over here who was treated better than these Tuskegee elders. So when Coleman Young hit Detroit, see, Detroit, starting from that point of view, it was whether they were going to put the money in the communities or put it in that big Renaissance center down there, which was a huge mistake. But let me say this about business, what we're talking about. Because when you're talking about business, you have to talk about it within the orbit of the capitalistic system in which we live in, the profit-making system. And the profit-making system that we live in now, capitalism, is what you call dual ethnic economic communities that you have all over the United States. And you got one ethnic group that don't have a community, that don't control. They got hoods, but they don't have the communities. Because when you have community, you control the economic life of your community and the cultural life of your community. Now, for example, you look at Koreatown here in Los Angeles, or Chinatown, or you just go down the list. You know, you're always going to have an ethnic group that controls the ethnic life of their communities, and then they exist in another dual economic community, which we call the shopping mall community. All the other ethnic groups exist in both of these communities, with the exception of the descendants of the slaves of America. We don't control the economic life of the community. And now, let's see why. Now, I got 5 books that I'm gonna mention today, and I'm gonna start off with one of them. It's called The Miseducation of the Negro.
The Negro.
And it came out, it was written by Carter G. Woodson. He wrote this book in the 20s. And up until that time, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois had put forth what he called the talented 10th. He believed that if 10% of the descendants of the chattel slaves of America got an education, they would reach back for the other 90%. So Carter G. Woodson came along, and he said that that's a mistake, because if you get a westernized education, that 10% is going to have more in common with mainstream society than the other 90%. And that's what we see happening today. You know, W.E.B. Du Bois, he moved away from that philosophy, but the educated 114 so-called Negro schools, they kept that philosophy, and they got it all the way up to today. So that's part of the problem that we're dealing with now. Those who present themselves as our leaders have been miseducated. That's why before Brown versus the Board of Education that broke down segregation in 1954, most of the Black professionals stayed in the Black community. I come out of a town called Greenville, Mississippi. We had 40 Black doctors down there, you know, and now you're lucky if you find 1 or 2. So that was one of the starting points. Now, another book that I got on the list, I call these the Lazarus Book Club to Wake Up the Dead. You know, this book is called Stolen Legacy. And it talks about how the whole Greek philosophy stole their information from the Egyptian, the ancient Egyptians. You know, starting with Alexander the Great. It should be on all of the descendants of the slaves of America's reading list, this particular book. Now, because the reason I point that out is most of our leadership that come to these schools are also part of these Greek fraternities. See, and the Greek fraternity, the brother who wrote the book, he wrote it, and both of them said that as long as you're off into this Greek philosophy, the Greek education, our people is going to be miseducated in terms of that.
Hey, Ishmael.
How you brothers doing today?
I'm live.
All right, there, sir.
Wait a minute, excuse me.
Yeah, hey, look, I apologize. I was looking on how to access the meeting here. I apologize for being late. I appreciate the knowledge that I'm getting right now. You know, I heard Brother Melvin say the miseducation. I call it the misguided education, you know, along with not just the miseducation, because a lot of our knowledge that we're getting, you know, whether it's on the streets or in school, a lot of it is misguided, getting it from the villains.
Yeah, misguided.
Right.
But I was just pointing out, because see, so much of this happened during the 20s. Another section that we're going to deal with in a minute, I call it FBI-ism and the legend of J. Hoover. Because see, when people talk about J. Hoover,
before you go in there, Melvin, I know it's going on 3, and I'm gonna have to get off at 3 because y'all 7 2 to 3. But I just want to say I agree with everything everybody been saying. You know, so much been said. You know what I mean? But again, it's a new day, 2020, and we got to put everybody, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Paul Robeson, we got to put everybody into our little think box. See, we got a lot of examples already. There's no one way to get the safe way. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there ain't no one way to get to Las Vegas. You can take different routes to get there, as long as you're going somewhere. And that's what we
be here. But let me say this, because I don't want to get sidetracked. We're going to be here until 4 o'clock if we want to come back or stay on. But let me say this. Let me explain this about J. Edgar Hoover. Because so many people miss the point when you say J. Edgar Hoover, they're talking about he's homosexual, he's gay, all of that. But this man developed a program that's impacting our community right now. Let me just go over some of this.
Okay, but so did Willie Lynn.
So you listen.
So did Willie Lynn.
You can stay. If you want to leave, you can leave. I don't want to get distracted. Now let me go on with because we're going to keep on rolling. I want to talk about J. Edgar Hoover for a minute because it's very important to understand who this man is and what he did. Now, J. Edgar Hoover, his first major case was Marcus Garvey. They sent him to neutralize Marcus Garvey and the Universal Negro Improvement Association. Hoover, he developed a concept that we're dealing with today called the concept of infiltration and disinformation. That became counterintelligence program, which became the COINTEL program that they turned loose against the Panthers during the 60s. Now, even after the death of J. Edgar Hoover, this is why it's so important to understand this technique, you know, so we won't buy into all this confusions and stuff. They used this technique to break up the community, especially here in the Los Angeles, into Crips and Bloods. And then they broke up the Crips into a number of sections, and then they broke up the Bloods into a number of sections all over the country. This was the same COINTEL program that we're talking about here. Here's a man that we better study because this is a man that was responsible for the assassination of President Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Fred Hampton. See, so all I'm laying the foundations of dealing with this because we can't think about the economic life of our communities that we're dealing with today without studying the importance of what this individual developed that we're still dealing with today. Anybody want to pick up on that?
Hi, this is Pastor Eddie Jones. I'm just getting in and somebody turned my volume down, but if you could turn me up, I would love to introduce myself and share with the group.
I can hear you. Yeah, it's good.
Okay, it's funny, but my volume is down and I turned it all the way up. But anyway, I'm Pastor Eddie Jones, president of the Los Angeles Civil Rights Association. It's an honor to be a part of this discussion that talks about civil, constitutional, and human rights. And one of the areas that I'd like to touch on, because you've touched on a lot of phenomenal, fantastic things, I want to send a big shout out to Brother Clarence M. Allen with his book, Regulate the Manual. I don't know if he read anything out of his book today, but what an amazing, phenomenal book. I've read it from the beginning to the end. But we as African Americans and Black men, and you know, we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. For instance, I don't know if you heard about in Cordova, California, where the police officer beat up the 14-year-old kid on Monday. And last night I went live, and I gave out the phone number to the Cordova Police Department in Rancho Cordova, California, which is right by Sacramento. I gave out their address. I asked everybody to call down there and let them know that we don't want a police officer who has a tear gas, a gun, and everything else, and PR-24s, and that he doesn't have to beat up a 14-year-old kid and beat him in the face and in the head. We've been dealing with brutality for 400 years, and it's time that we overcome it, not just by discussion, but also by action. So one of the actions that I took was to give out the address and the phone number, the officer's name, and the sergeant and the watch commander's name, so that we could call down there and flood out the Cordova Police Department in Rancho Cordova, California. And I think it's pertinent information. And if you don't mind, could you talk a little bit about police brutality, where we've been and where we're going?
Okay, I'll get into that. Brother Allen, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Brother Melvin. I'm Clarence Allen. I do what I can out here to share information, to be activists out here, to bring not peace, but unity and real knowledge. You know, one of the websites I'm gonna share right now, where you can get a lot of this information that Brother Melvin is elaborating on. This website comes from our own scholars. We have our own scholars which tell a different story from those who had taught us in school and gave us their part of the story. And this website is unitedblackbooks.org.
Okay.
I influence everyone that's on this, is going to get this through Facebook Live later on, to go to unitedblackbooks.org. It has a lot of this historical information that I heard Brother Melvin, when I first came on, elaborating on. So, you know, it have our own scholars. I mean, Kemet, the African history, our own kings and queens, brutalities that we have faced in America and all around the world. So, you know, get adjusted with it. A lot of these books you can download for free. I have one book that I recommend you get. It's titled African Holistic Health by Dr. Lialo Africa. It's about $1. So these books is $1 and $2 and $3 where we can get a lot of this information. They're not expensive at all. It's a lot of them that's free. So I just like to bless you, brothers. Thank you. I was looking since 2 o'clock on how to get on this Zoom information. So thank you, Pastor Eddie, for announcing one of my books, Regulate the Manual. The reason I've written Regulate the Manual is because of all of these situations and circumstances that we're all going through, not only in our personal life, but also on the everyday events and situations on the streets. You know, I think we all go through what I will say we call what we think we know. You know, we all been given a certain amount of education where we can reason with ourselves and think for ourselves. But not to jump on Brother Melvin back again, but do we know the facts? Do we have the real historical facts of the atrocities, the genocides that's been happening to us since the Europeans used the name of Jesus Christ as a weapon to colonize all of us across the earth? Before Christians became Christian, Jesus, he was actually Muslim. You know, Islam was the religion. People didn't practice Christianity until he got followers, and those followers, they didn't call themselves Christians until after his death on his crucifixion and his resurrection, some days after, when they met according to the Bible in the upper room, and they said the Holy Spirit came down and they all spoke in different tongues. So, you know, John the Baptist, he spoke of Jesus before he came. He said, there's one after me. So we need to recognize about some of the deceptions within this Bible, you know, that was written and translated by King James. You know, some other history that had gotten that the African slave trade, it didn't become into existence until after the Pope in 1882 allowed it. I read a historical report that there was a boat that plugged blacks along the Western African coast and gave all these blacks to the Pope for free labor. He said all you have to do is feed them. And when the people saw that, they said, well, we want this too. And that's when Christopher Columbus and all this jumped off. So we got to re-educate ourselves from our own scholars.
Let me say this, and I don't want to forget. I want to deal with this police brutality before we leave too, but I also want to talk about the importance of. But let me say this: you brought up about having the correct information and about Jesus, and I want to put them in proper perspective, and I want to do that from a book. Another one of the books that I call books, the Lazarus Book Club, to Wake Up the Dead. And this book is called The Jewish Wars by Flavius Josephus. Now, what makes this book so important is because this book is written by a person who come from the same town where Jesus come from, Galilee, and also lived during the same time. His name is Flavius Josephus, one of the most important historians when you're going to talk about Jesus. See, what we need to understand about the Messiah Jesus, you want to read that book. You also want to become familiar with what they call the Dead Sea Scrolls that they found in 1947. This is where they got the oldest documents of the Old Testament in the language that Jesus spoke. Now remember, the King James Version and all of that, that was translated into Greek through the works of the Apostle Paul. See, now as far as Jesus being what you call a Muslim, only in the sense that the word Muslim means peace, but they existed in different historical periods. The Prophet Muhammad came after the time period of the Messiah Jesus. When you're talking about the Messiah Jesus, you're talking about two types of Christianity. You're talking about the type of Christianity that developed from the teachings of Jesus, and then you're talking about the type of Christianity that developed when the Apostle Paul went to Asia Minor and took the teachings of Jesus there. And then later on, by the time the Emperor Constantine came along, you had two trends of Christianity that viewed Jesus differently. You had the one that Apostle Paul, they deified Jesus. They looked at Jesus as God because he went through the educated world. The ones that went through Judea, the disciples of Jesus, they viewed Jesus as the Messiah. So Constantine, he called the first Nicene Conference. It was at Nicaea, July the 4th, 325 AD, and they had to decide on which type of Christianity they were going to move in. And they chose the teachings of the Apostle Paul. And this was the beginning of the Roman Universal Church. And the word universal is Catholic. And that's where all your denominations and all of that, they come from that period. The first important period, 325 AD at the first Nicene Council. And then the next important period is the year 1611, when the King James version of the Bible was developed. So those in religion, but what you got to understand about, I mentioned it earlier, it's all about the economic system in which we exist in. And when we're talking about the economic system, we're talking about the means of production, how you get the things that you need to survive on. And there's only two types, the communal and the competitive. The communal is in ancient histories. As far as they could travel back, the economic system was communal all the way up until the Babylonian Empire, when an individual named Seb, that they called Nimrod, developed the Code of Hammurabi. And the Code of Hammurabi put value system on products that was out in nature, on what was the value system of it. And those, that's capitalism. And as we exist today, capitalism is a revolving entity, that always need new markets to exploit. And as I pointed out earlier, for those that live in Los Angeles, you got the perfect laboratory to see capitalism as a dual ethnic economic communities, where a particular ethnic group control the economic life and the cultural life of their community, and also exist in what I call the shopping mall community, where all the ethnic groups mix and exchange. Now, the descendants of the slaves of America, because of our history, we exist only in the shopping mall community. We don't have any community. If you have any, tell me where they at, where we control the economic and cultural life of a particular community. We got hoods, but we don't have a community. I think it's very important to understand that. We got to understand all of these elements when we get the Babylonian Empire, get the United States to redress us, to take care of what they owed us for building up this country. So it means that we got to get all of these misconceptions out of the way, and we got to come together as a unit, see? And that means elevating the so-called Christian church that we have now, because the Black church has always been a very important social institution until the Greek middle-class, miseducated leaders that we have, have just neutralized the value of the Black church and what it was during slavery and right after slavery. Anybody want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I'll pick up on it. Because, now I'll start with the historical part. Growing up, I never thought of history as being important. But as I got older, I recognized how we're living history right now. Somebody 20, 30, 100 years from now will be talking about what happened in our time period. So once I started to realize history is nothing more than about how people interacted with each other and for whatever, various reason. And so putting it into that context, we have to realize when you look at where we are now and our education system, and because I've been in it for quite a while, when people say that, excuse me, the education system is failing us, that, no, not failing us, it's failing. That's a misnomer, because the education system is working perfectly. It just is working perfectly to work against us. And when you look at it from a whole perspective or a holistic perspective, you'll see that everything is set up to be adversarial against Black people and people of color. Most wars have been fought in lands where there are people of color. People talk about the Middle East. But how is there a Middle East when there's no middle, north, south, or west? And when you continue, you look at slavery transformed into the prison industrial complex. The economy is based on Black people, people of color, because I love it when people say, oh, there's no money in the Black community. Another misnomer. Because Black people in 2018 had a buying power of $1.54 trillion. And so what does that translate to? That translates to people are coming to our communities, setting up shop, and at the end of the day, they're leaving richer and richer. And so when you tie that into reparations, as I said earlier, we can, walk and chew gum and have a conversation. We have to stop and take a look at the institutions in this country. The police. Most people don't know that the police were formed from the slave catchers. And not to offend anybody, it was the Catholic Church who approved the slavery as we know it, the modern version of slavery. And that's based on the Catholic Church is the base of Christianity. And we don't even know that Christianity existed in Ethiopia. Matter of fact, most people, and this is part of the educational piece, don't even recognize two major things. Egypt is in Africa, but when you look at the way they teach it, Egypt is like a satellite, in world geography. But there's so much rich culture throughout Africa. So many things have come through that, as well as the fact that the economy is based on Black folks all around the world. If you take the consumerism of Black folks and turn it inward where we're supporting ourselves, this, economic system would be turned on its head because Black folks like buying. It's just something in us, maybe we're feeling some kind of void, but we don't realize if we save a portion of that consumerist dollars that we spend, we could get the things we want. And an example is we don't need scholarships. If people stop buying $200, or more gym shoes, if you save a portion of that money, put in the bank or whatever, or you go beyond just learning what they're offering you, we can go to school for free and do a whole lot of the same thing, with burials.
Let me
finish up by saying that we have to realize there is a economic hose, a vacuum hose connected to African American and Black people and people of colors pockets around the world to siphon out our economic resources.
Okay. Flat or Brother Jones, either one you want to comment?
I would just like to say, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, the philosophy behind somebody not buying the $200 tennis shoes and whatnot, it's like, to me, and like you said, I'm not trying to be disrespectful about any of this. I think it's so brilliant that we can,
opinion.
Yeah, that we can talk. the whole slave trade and all of these things in the past and the history and all that, I think is beautiful, but I think we're just sitting here chiming about stuff that can't nobody really change. And just my opinion is that we're dealing with abortion, homosexuality, and drugs that are killing our communities and a black population or percentage of black population or people in the United States is what, 14%? In the whole United States of America, our people unless you guys have better information than me. Los Angeles, 9%. It's like, I love, and I really don't love talking about slavery and all these kinds of things, but I think we got to get up, like Melvin's book is saying, is 14%. We should own this. It's like you're saying, Black people match intelligence with anybody in the world. I don't like to use the word superior physically, but we should own this. And it ain't got nothing to do with nothing but us getting up and getting away from all that crap that was done to us and changing the things that are being done to us. And I believe that's through voting. I believe if you're Black and you vote for gay homosexual ideology, you don't even know what you're doing. Or voting for people that are going to put drugs in the street, you don't know what you're doing. You're not Black. You're not, in my opinion, what are you?
We lost you for a moment.
What's that?
Your volume out on your phone. Okay.
Okay, you see that?
I lost your volume flat.
Oh.
We can't hear you. Check your volume.
Yeah, I didn't do anything.
Let me
it may be the signal dropping.
Slavery thing. Speaking
Okay,
of
nobody can hear me?
That I want to bring something to our attention. It's another book that I want all of us to make this part of our collection, because it's a very important book. It's called The Invention of the White Race by Dr. Theodore Allen.
What's the name of that again?
Because in a nutshell, what this book is about, it goes back in the early history, during the 1676, you had a rebellion in Jamestown. The rebellion was called Bacon's Rebellion because it was led by this guy named Nathaniel Bacon. But Nathaniel Bacon, the whole conflict was you had a collaborative group of Black slaves, poor white indentured servants, mulattoes, who led the rebellion. They burned Jamestown. And then because they wanted more land, what had happened, the whole indentured servants, they brought a lot of ex-convicts, et cetera, like that, poor people from Europe over here to work off their debt. They was called indentured servants or bond servants. And most of these were Europeans coming over here. So after they go around, so that's what led to the rebellion. And then after they assassinated Nathaniel Bacon, they tricked him. They ended up executing most of the people involved in the rebellion. And from that point on, they included in their law, the legal law, because you can't find that term prior to that, the word white. This is when they made the different ethnic Europeans and a lot of the mulattoes that became white because they sold out the other economic brothers, you know, the Native Americans and the black slaves and et cetera like that. So we have to understand that the whole term white is in relationship to bringing all of these European ethnic groups onto the orbit so that they can continue to exploit others, the Native Americans, the slaves, et cetera, like that. So I bring that up so we don't get lost with that term. Now, I think it's some very good work out here in terms of developing our communities. I think one of the best is a book called Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson. See, the starting point in a capitalistic society is economics. You know,
it is the foundation.
So I feel that we heading up to the whole concept of reparations, we're going to have to unify and strengthen the economic life. In other words, we're going to have to build some communities, like in Detroit, like here in Los Angeles. We got to get away. All we got is hoods now. Now, one of the things that I think this virus, this is one of the things I want to talk to OG about before he left, because I thought that there was really an opportunity to redevelop Skid Row as a community. And when we're talking about this as a community, we're not talking about all of these social recreational programs. We're talking about businesses. We're talking about setting up factories and business and et cetera like that. For example, there's a market right now for masks. How come we don't have people down in the Skid Row in these areas among African Americans trying to set up some factories that make masks? We're going to be dealing with this pandemic for the next couple of years. So I think this is what we need to produce. Right now, we don't produce nothing. We don't even have a toothpick factory. So that's one of the starting points of strengthening our community. And Flat, I agree with you about the dominant, what we see happening in the dominant gay community, you know, with gay marriages, et cetera, and all that kind of stuff. Now, we've always had this in our community from a historical point of view. But the fact that they're so dominant now in terms of changing the norms is what I think that you're talking about, Flat. So what, anybody want to pick up on that? What can we do about it? Because when you're talking about voting, anybody want to pick up on that?
I like to say that as a people, we've been infected, we are contaminated, and we have been polluted with all the social sickness and weaknesses and ignorances that our educators, as you said earlier, miseducation. I call it misguided education. The education that we have been given is misguided. So we are infected with violence. We are, one of the most key ingredients to this is profanity. Profanity is the, you know, like they used to say back in the day, marijuana was the gateway to harder drugs. The profanic language is the gateway to all of our evils, our violence, our criminal activity, drugs, and many other weaknesses that we have as a people. So we're gonna have to recognize where our attacks are coming from. And what we need to guide our attacks toward is what you were elaborating on, is books. Two of the things that I seen as I read some books during the time of slavery, two things that the slave wanted. One was freedom, and the other one was education. And during that time, if you got caught with a book, you would be strung up on a tree. But now that we are free to read as much as we want, we have lost that value on the importance of reading. I think that there are many of us who might have that assumption that if I pick up a book, I'm missing out something on in the world because I won't get this, I'm not able to do that. And so, you know, our hypnotism that we have been given, our indoctrinations that we have been given have just gotten us to want to feel good. You know, we got to get out of these feelings. I don't do feelings.
Okay.
I don't do happy.
Let me say this. We're having some technical problems. So let me let Brother Allen and Brother Flat, but why don't you take 2 minutes and give some closing comments because we're having some technical problems here. And then we'll pick it up again next week. Give us some closing comments. Let's start with Brother Allen. A couple minutes for closing comments and your contact information. Same thing with you, Flat. Let's go with Brother Allen.
First of all, thank you, Brother Melvin. Thank you, Brother Flat. I want to thank all of y'all. Bobby Buck for hosting this, the pasture. I just thank all of you brothers for inviting me to come aboard. I've gotten a lot of information. I want to get that last book that you mentioned. I need to get the name of that because of the notes I'm taking. I'm just honored to be aboard this and to get a lot of this knowledge from you brothers to put on my foundation where I can go out and have something to stand on to share with others. So I love you brothers. God bless you brothers. God keep you brothers. You know, let's all practice protecting the #1 rule in boxing. Before they ring that bell, the referee tell both boxers, protect yourself at all times. So at all times, let's protect ourselves with this deadly disease that they designed to take us out. Thank you.
Right. Flat.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, like he said, Melvin, I really do appreciate, you know, the opportunity, and I appreciate just the knowledge of I feel intimidated, you know, always when I'm around you, but these other brothers are quite the thing, you know. So, but what I would like to just say is I'm not really about the past and the slavery and all that stuff. I'm about what's killing us right now and what's keeping us down right now. And I believe that's homosexuality, drugs, and there was a third thing, but I forgot what it was. Abortion. Like I said, 14%. The whole United States. That's the percentage of Black people in the whole United States. 14%. We are smart. We are strong. And what's going to help us to go forward from that? I don't believe us knowing about slavery is going to do that. I believe we need to concentrate and learn the game, learn how to play the game, get a job, get a good woman, and have some kids and treat them right and put God first. And I think if we can do that for real, I think we can win.
Let me please say this, if you will, because Brother Flat, I love you. I appreciate what you say, but we got to learn this history. One of the reasons that we as Blacks are having a problem acclimating to this European system is because we're one of the only races where our umbilical cord is not attached to our motherland. The same thing that's happening today has happened during slavery. If we don't know who we are and where we came from and what happened to us, we're going to continue to be deceived throughout time and life.
Yeah, I understand that, and I'm not against that. I'm just saying we don't need to be spending a lot of time on that. We need to go and get what we need to get, and then we need to look and run this race. You can't win a race if you're looking back behind you. You gotta win this race, and that's where I'm at. It's just where I'm at. I respect you guys for what you think, but I do respect it. But I want to win a race, and I want to see Black children. I want to see Black families, and I want to populate the United States of America, which I believe is the greatest nation on the earth. I believe that. And I believe doing what we got to do, if we do what we got to do and get what we need to get, it's going to be even greater. And we can do that.
Thank you, Flint. Let me say this. I just want to review quickly.
Let me say before you close out, understand history from this perspective. When they're setting up for tonight's, football game, what do they talk about the teams? How do they set it up? They talk about their history. When you go into a doctor's office, they want to know your history, because that's the only way you can improve on what you're going into in the future. Then you run the race. And so
I think that's the problem, is that we ain't running. We need to get running.
Let me say this. I want to get that echo on. I want to briefly close out. I want to mention what I talked about early. During the time of this virus, look, make sure you take care of yourself, right? Follow all these rules that they laying out until we find out what's really happened. But what you can do for yourself and your family now, I mentioned it early, make sure that you have these 5 things as part of your everyday life. Make them a part of that. Garlic, honey, right? Oatmeal, herbal tea, and water. Those are the 5 things. You work them however you want to work them into your everyday life for your family. It will help fight diseases, virus, and boost the immune system. Now, I want to mention 5 books that I want you to pick up and read that have a lot of this history in them. The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop. This is one that deals with the origins of all of these rituals and the meanings of it. The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Stolen Legacy by George G.M. James. And the final book is called The Invention of the White Race by Dr. Theodore Allen. Get your hand on those and read them. I think you would love it. Okay, so we're having a little technical problem. That's how come we have to cut it short. We'll pick it up again next week. I want to thank you very much for being guests on the show. Very enlightening conversation. Looking forward to picking it up again. So this is your host, Melvin Ishmael Johnson. May the peace and blessings of the life-giving creative spirit be upon you and upon your family. Have a good day.
Homeboy. Homeboy. Brothers, there's only one blood, cause it ain't no sense in us trampling on the stones. It's us, down to the bone. Blood is thick, waters were known well, cousins were kept apart, mothers were often memories. Fathers were not favorites on the farm, for he could do some harm, he could wreck the master scheme, for he, brothers, could dream. Your mama ain't no saint, your daddy died in a shallow stream, but your uncle Dr. King did have a dream, my brother. And what is your real excuse? Why can't you study your lessons and stay in school? Why can't you study your lessons and stay in school? Free love and sex ain't nothing but a game. Don't never last, try hope. Take a chance on love, register to vote. Money ain't everything, but you could buy her a ring. Listen to little blackbird sing. you a record of a yardbird with wings. Get into the swing of things, homeboy. Try some tenderness for a change. Home is where your history is, and it's not too late.